Ever since the new Cosmos aired a couple of weeks ago, it first aired, I've been I've really enjoyed it. It's just been absolutely fantastic, and there are a few things here and there that are inaccurate, uh, like the asteroids being far too close together in the asteroid belt, uh, and stuff like that. But the animated sequences are what I really want to talk about here in this vlog. The the animated sequences, well, first off, the voice acting is not all that great. The I blame the script, really. Honestly, there's a lot of anachronistic turns of phrase in there. Um, but the thing I most want to talk about is the fact that it seems to take a few liberties with history. And that's going to be the subject of this video. Let's talk about Giordano Bruno. Now, Giordano Bruno is often held up that he's some sort of martyr for science. Now, while it is true that he did read up uh, on the scientific texts of the time, I mean, he was a heliocentrist because he read Copernicus. He believed in an infinite universe where every star was an individual sun, possibly with planets revolving around it, because he had read Thomas Digges. These ideas were floating around at the time. They were hardly common, but they were there, right? And Giordano Bruno rightly saw how a lot of this, that a lot of this was true. He saw the evidence before him of the Copernican model and the advantages of it over the Ptolemaic model, right? It's getting rid of epicycles, that crazy sun spiral that's required for the seasons. There's, the wobbling of the ecliptic. None of that needs to be there with the Copernican model, and so, I mean, if you look closely at the available evidence, of course the Copernican model makes sense once you know what it is. Now, but that's not why the Inquisition came down on him. He actually made enemies in a lot of places, and it wasn't because of his... he had to actually go into hiding at the French embassy when he was in England because his views were so wild, right? I want to make one thing perfectly clear. Galileo was not a heretic, but Giordano Bruno was even more of a heretic than I am, and I'm a damned apostate. I would very much have burned at the stake in the 16th century, and Giordano Bruno had some wild ideas. Let's talk about Hermetism. Right now, Giordano Bruno worshipped the Egyptian god of knowledge, Thoth. His beliefs centered around a bunch of apocryphal texts, believed at the time to have come from ancient Egypt, to have dated back to the time of the Exodus. And these texts turned out on much later examination to be not authentic. It was a very widespread cult in Europe at the time, even if it was underground. They believed that all religions had a certain common thread in them, and that there was one true religion that all of these religions aspired to. Now, you can't imagine the Vatican would be too happy about that. I mean, you can see how that would not be. That and he worshipped a freaking Egyptian god. That is fairly solidly heretical. And he did not keep these views secret. He went out and championed all of them, and championing Copernicanism and the Diggs model of the universe. This did not make him many friends, and this did not help when it came to trying to get adoption of the Copernican model of the solar system. It did not help at all. It sort of tarred all of that with the same brush. It led almost directly to the Vatican banning Copernicanism. I mean, it was pretty, and it instilled in the Inquisition, and the Jesuits in particular, a furious desire to stamp this out. They associated Hermetism and Copernicanism. They were kind of all muddled together as the same, under the same heresy. Right? So, if you were a Copernican, they would assume that you were a Hermetist. Which was unfair to Copernicanism. It really was. Because when Galileo makes his observations, in fact, I mean, not everybody got the memo in the Catholic Church, really, up to and including the Pope. Now, Galileo was not a heretic. He's a pretty staunch Catholic, actually, like most men of the time. He really was, and his dealings with the Vatican were at first quite friendly, actually. In fact, uh, his writings were published under the imprimatur of the Vatican. The Vatican printed this stuff that was later called heretical, and he had to recant for. It's, when you think about that, it's just, it was really, what happened with Galileo was not, he was not persecuted by the Inquisition because he was Copernican. He was persecuted by the Vatican, he was persecuted by the Inquisition because he was very close and associated with the de Medicis and the previous pope, because the pope that his patron was really close to died, and was replaced by a very Jesuit-friendly pope. The Jesuits then decided to silence this guy, to help stamp out what was in their view a heresy. And so that is that sad story of Galileo, but Giordano Bruno made it worse. Giordano Bruno, I'm not going to fault the guy. He was doing his best to make sense of the world and the universe around us. And, I'm not going to criticize him for that, and I don't want to diminish what he was able to put together from what was available at the time. But the idea that he's some sort of martyr for science, that he was executed because of his views on science, is inaccurate. He was not executed because he was a heliocentrist. He was executed because he worshipped a different god. And it's that's a little, and I understand the writers of Cosmos wanted to make a nice, neat little package for people to digest, right? They wanted to build a narrative out of this. And that is the problem when you cherry-pick history to build a narrative. You can come up with something that's very misleading. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. There is a part 2 coming. We're going to talk about Isaac Newton and Hooke and their rivalry, and how unfairly that was treated in the 3rd episode of Cosmos. Anyway, if you like the video, subscribe down below, or leave a comment in the comments section. I like to hear comments. I like to read them. I don't always respond, but I always take them to heart. So please let me know I'm not broadcasting out into a vacuum. I really enjoy doing this. But yeah, like, share, all that jazz. Anyway, I'll see you next time.